Hey, everybody. Take a minute, let people get in here. We'll talk about this. I have some interesting feelings on these last two chapters. Not quite sure where to put it at, but I'll do a quick summary and then I'll get into it. Some of the stuff I've been looking at. If you're coming in, hit the like button, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Helps out the channel. All right. So, last two chapters, I'm a little behind, just time-wise. I haven't been able to get in here. And I'm actually kind of glad I waited to talk about the chapters that are out right now, because last chapter was like a bombshell. So, at the end of the last chapter, or we'll talk about the whole chapter first. So, the beginning is the main detail is doppelgangers are now coming out more, and it's one that we recognize. And they are humanoid doppelgangers, potentially. And the ones that we find out are Captain Haig from the 4th, who has a very interesting power set. It looks like he's got these shadowy hands coming out of his back, and he keeps murmuring about adolla like he did in real life. And so he's fighting his own old squad without their heavy hitter, without Ogun, because Ogun's been roughed up by Charon pretty badly. And at the end of the chapter, we get to see an old familiar face, and it basically Rekka is back. Instantly, since we've been following the lore, we would assume this is a doppelganger. That's what I first thought. I've probably reread these chapters 7 or 8 times, and I've also went back and watched all the episodes with Rekka on the anime. So he comes back and he's talking to his old teammates before they get to fight. And they kind of do some tassels back and forth, but you know, they're just, at first, they're kind of really excited to see him again. They're like, yeah, it's hot-headed Rekka. He's back. I'm glad to see you again. And, you know, he's being Rekka, and he's being crazy. Like, Rekka has, like, an absurd personality, almost to the point of, like, anybody who acted like that you would think was something bizarre, which is, we'll get to my point on that later. But both members of the first that are talking to him are assuming, they're saying, you've already died, because we saw Arrow, while he was frozen, put a hole through his chest, right? And he still has the hole. And I have questions about that. So they're assuming that he's a doppelganger from the get-go. They're saying it's a perfect image of the doppelganger. Even he doesn't really say this out loud, but even to the point of having the hole through his chest. And he's like, "What do you mean? You think I look like the type of guy who cares about that tiny detail?" And they have a little fight back and forth. They have a tassel, and then he starts talking about despair, and they kind of stop and they ask, have you always been like this? Like, have you always been hot-headed and crazy, or were you like bred by that or something like that? Like, your sense of justice was lured towards a path of evil. And then he mentions that he was one of the orphans selected by Sister Sumier, which is interesting because all we've seen is that she took care of sisters. Now, the first is full of what are they? I don't know what they would be. There's sisters and priests in the first. They're all able to do the prayer, or friars. I don't know what you want to call them. They're all able to do the prayer, and they're all able to fight as well. So I could see her having a boys' sect as well. Maybe that was just off screen and we didn't see that. But he says he was selected from the very beginning, and he can't remember a time where he wasn't straying from the path of righteousness. And he basically claims, instead of being a disciple of the Holy Soul Church, which is the front end of the church, he is a disciple of adolla, and he prays for the despair of humanity. So he was with the White Clad all along. Obviously, that's how he got the bugs. That's how he got the mission to find adolla bursts, because that was his crazy mission, was to find that. He's the reason why Nitaku even has his adolla burst. He says, bring your hands to your chest and listen to me. You must be aware of death until the very end. There is despair in everything we set out to do. And then it focuses on the hole in his chest. And then another interesting thing is we finally get to see what Fairy's been up to this entire time. And it looks like he's the architect behind this. Because he seems to want to get the fighters of the first to either be defeated, probably by Rekka, or they defeat Rekka, or they want Rekka to convince them to be on his side and give in to the despair that's coming. And then the last couple of panels of the chapter are the fourth fighting Captain Haig, and without their heavy hitter, they're just kind of getting wrecked pretty badly. He's using his new powers. He's flinging people around like crazy. I don't know how they're going to be able to beat him, but by the end of it, the whistle guy, he buffs himself up, and then we get Vulcan and Arthur heading to the 8th. So let's get to the meat of what I think is going on here. So I have to question a couple things. Do I think the Rekka in front of us is a doppelganger? Yes. But I also think the Rekka from the past that we've seen is the same doppelganger. He's got an absurd personality. He's on message with the evangelists. And he's got a hole in his chest, just like what happened last time. I think the real Rekka probably, if you go in the anime or in the manga, Kareem has a picture of Rekka. They might have been 12 or 13 years old. That was probably the real Rekka, and he was probably killed and taken over by a lifelike doppelganger like the Rekka we have now, like Iris is, basically. It's clearly possible, and they're able to do it. And so let me just kind of go through my proof. So I'm using the anime stills from this because I just don't want to anger the bots. You know how it's just the algorithm cops, you want to call it that, for any kind of manga. Anybody talks about manga. But it seems to be less stingy with anime clips. So after Shinra basically gives Rekka the business, the first show up and they start freezing Rekka. And then they turn him into a full solid form here, leaving Rekka vulnerable to attack from Arrow. So Arrow is the reason why he has this large hole in his chest, because he became a liability. I don't think Kareem's powers, I think it's Kareem that's the one who's able to do the ice powers. I don't think he was intending to kill. He was immobilizing Rekka, and they were going to take care of him. And then at that point, they could, interrogate him or whatever and get the information way earlier than they need to. But at the same time, Arrow outed herself by killing Rekka, and Shinra was able to kind of track them down and see who they are. So, they already revealed themselves regardless. But at the end of the episode, or even at the end of the manga, you don't see them haul Rekka off. You don't see them have a funeral. You don't have anything happening like that. So I'm wondering, has he been encased in ice this whole time? And you might be asking, even if he's a doppelganger, wouldn't he die with a hole in his chest? Not necessarily. We don't know too much. I mean, we know that the core of a doppelganger, which is basically an infernal from Andorra, a very powerful infernal from Adolla, has to be destroyed the same as a normal infernal, but maybe the core is, maybe she missed the core, maybe something like that. I think the Rekka that we're seeing in the manga right now is this same Rekka. He says, "I'm back," of all things. I think he's being genuine. I don't think the real Rekka died at this part in the story. I think he died a long time ago, and he's been a doppelganger the whole time. What do we know about doppelgangers? They are what you are perceived to be in the real world. Even if, we're going to do this hypothetically. Hypothetically, if real Rekka was just a slightly angry, happy-go-lucky justice person, but not nearly as absurd, he would get the reputation for that. And then that reputation would be spread, and then the absurdities would follow, and then the doppelganger would then be as absurd as Rekka. Rekka's an absurd character. Really absurd. Was from the very beginning, is now. So I think potentially either Fairy was the one who unthawed him if he was still frozen. They might have just left him there frozen. I don't know. Or the key mixing the dimensions to Adolla, causing the entire place to heat up anyway, just thawed him, because in the last chapter, Korean was able to freeze an entire fire tornado temporarily, and then it broke through, which is to his surprise of all things. Let's see here. So yeah, this is the point where arrow shot through the chest. Well, that's a good question about doppelgangers. So prior to the cataclysm, doppelgangers that we saw, besides Iris and potentially Rekka, showed up in zones where I would think the Veil to Adolla are very weak. So that's why Konro was able to fight his doppelganger in Akasa, because I think they are a special zone because of their unique culture. So one thing that I've not really commented in the past is the Empire is a very is a culture full of despair. They have a religion and a church that kind of says, we're going to deliver you from this plague of human combustion, and by doing that, we're going to pray for your soul. So you are destined to die anyway. We can't do anything about that, but your soul will go on to the Holy Soul. Whereas in Benimaru's area and Konro's area, they're very human combustion happens, but it's a celebration. It's a hopeful thing. Yeah, you're getting smoked, but everyone's clamoring and hopeful and screaming and happy and and so it's a complete opposite philosophy to what the Tokyo Empire has. But I think that zone is special for that reason. So we've only seen doppelgangers there, and then we've also seen the doppelganger that stabbed the leader of the first and then dragged him into Adolla. We saw his, and the veil was weak there too, I think, due to Hawamea's influence. So now that the veil has been removed and Adolla is here due to the cataclysm, doppelgangers are everywhere, and what makes them appear, makes them come after a host, is if the host gives into despair immediately, and then they die. Usually get bear hugged or whatever. If you go back 3 or 4 chapters, you can see that happening to various different characters. And even before that, when the veil was super close, when the pillars are up, you could spontaneous human combustion was happening like crazy. And the lore on that is it's a doppelganger trying to encroach on the person. And the way I interpret that is that your human eye still can't see the doppelgangers in Adolla, but they're standing there right next to you trying to encroach on your reality, and them just breaking through that veil is enough to cause you to combust. That's my theory. But I don't have an explanation as to how doppelgangers like Iris get, and they're humanoid ones too, that look completely human, how they become there. Some people are theorized every time Fairy's around, you see a doppelganger that looks human. The Raffles doppelganger being a good example, and potentially Rekka. But I think the explanation could be as easy as the evangelist just brings them over the veil. A good example of that is where you go back to the Chinese peninsula, and you saw that man whose name escapes me right now, but he's the one who became a demon when the evangelist crossed over the veil. He was he found the veil. It's just like a glass structure, I guess you could say, glass, or like invisible with glass, and the evangelist comes out, launches a bug at him, turns him into a demon. She could literally just drag him through that. My theory is that Fairy and Dragon are dragged to the real world that way too. I don't think they're human at all. I think they're infernals or someone's doppelgangers from the past or whatever. But my main theory, though, from these last 2 chapters is that this Rekka is the same Rekka. Rekka's always been a doppelganger. He's still got a hole in his chest. It didn't break his core. He was just incapacitated or frozen. And he's now being set up by Fairy to take out some of the most powerful Fire Force members of the first. And then who knows what goes on with that. But yeah, and then at the end of the chapter, we get to see what's going on with Arthur and Vulcan. I don't know what the heck they're going to be doing. The Shrine of Awakening is what it says at the end. The Promised Land, the Shrine of Awakening. I think what's potential is now that Adolla is crossed over, if you put enough brain power and belief, you can change a structure. I think Arthur is going to make his I mean, the eighth into some sort of castle. I would not be surprised if you see the eighth structure actually change, and it's going to be like a new realization of what belief can do now that Adolla has here encroached in the real world. But I could be completely wrong, and I could be completely wrong about Rekka. He could just be the real Rekka did die back when Shinra fought him the first time. And this is just the doppelganger now. But my theory is that it's been the doppelganger the whole time, and the real Rekka probably died earlier, like when he was younger, probably by Sumier, and then replaced. Yeah, yeah. Arthur is. I've been saying for the last 6 months that Arthur is tuned in to Adolla in some way with his rapid imagination. He's tuned into the power or how that works. He's closer to than everybody else, and so is his father. He understands that the reality that he lives in is not a reality. It is just a perception. And so he uses his perception to change reality and his powers to his liking. I think that is the core of his power. And as long as he keeps control of that, then he'll be able to defeat Dragon. Like Dragon, before he got knocked off into space, was yapping about him giving into despair, and maybe there was a little bit of that. Maybe Arthur wasn't giving into his full delusion, which is not a delusion at this point. It is the reality of the world now that Adolla has been mixed. So, I don't know. I'm hoping the next chapter isn't too bloated, and what I mean by that is you have 3 storylines that are happening at the same time now. You've got the fight between Captain Haig, you got the fight between Rekka, and you got what Vulcan and Arthur are doing. And who knows? Joker finally came back. We don't know what Benimara's doing. We haven't seen Shinra show since the defeat of Raffles. The only pillars that we've really had any interaction with are Halamea and Sumier. Halamea had a couple off-screen panels during the Charon fight. And we got to see her reaction to what happened to Charon, and then obviously Sumier with her bizarre past. Still want to know how that woman's been alive for 250,000 years. So maybe she's the doppelganger of Sumier after the first cataclysm. No idea. But yeah, that's my theory. This Rekka is a doppelganger and been one the entire time. So I don't think I have anything else to add to that. Be neat if that is not actually explained. And what I mean by that, like, I don't think Okubo has to come out and flat out and tell us that. It just could be a theory or something that people yap about for years after the manga is over. Like, do you think the Rekka, like, you go back and rewatch the anime for all things with the full knowledge of the manga, because it'll change things. Like, it's like Attack on Titan. Once Attack on Titan, it's got one more chapter left. And after this last chapter there, and I'm not going to spoil things too much, but a lot of things make more sense. So Attack on Titan is going to be one of those stories that it'll be better for a rewatch or reread once you've read the entire thing. Fire Force would be the same way. You'll start to see hints. You'll start to see reasons why things are happening. For example, I brought up that family that all got hit with human combustion except for the daughter, and then she was already falling despair, saying she was next, and she likely was, because the father probably despaired because the wife turned into a infernal, and then she got taken out. Then he got taken out, and then the same thing will happen with her. Be nice if she had a happy ending, but just something to think about. So once you understand the lore and understand what's going on, then it's just gonna be way better to review it. Yeah, I am gonna excited to see it animated. What sucks is we're clearly coming up to the end. Maybe I would say these little battles that we're seeing are a little more drawn out than I thought they would be, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm actually glad to see this kind of stuff. So who knows how many chapters we have left, but what sucks is I don't know how long it'll take for David Production to do a season 3. Would it be season 3? Yeah. I don't know how long they're gonna do. I think they'll probably do JoJo Part 6 before they do Fire Force season 3. But who knows? Maybe they could throw tons of money at them and they'll do a dual project. Don't know. So, yeah. Well, all right. So that's all I got on this. Live stream it today just to get it out there quickly. Time right now for me has been, let's just say I haven't had a ton of it, but I plan on coming back tomorrow and talk about a little bit of Black Clover. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in the manga. I do want to talk about other monthly mangas I'm going to start covering. One of those being World Trigger, probably Twin Star Exorcist, and a few others. So I have a really interesting, or not interesting, but like, I don't know, eclectic taste sometimes. Like I tend to follow the manga that nobody likes. So yeah, I'll be talking about that sooner or later. So hope you all have a good one. Like, subscribe, and comment. And thanks for hanging out with me in the chat, O'Malley. Hope you have a good one.